The ear's getting better? Are your ears okay?
Tell us what you're doing, Ted.
Okay, so we're just going up, nice and slow, gentle, so that the ears don't have any issues. Pretty simple. There's a gas charged tank over here, which is running room air that's under pressure into the chamber. We're now at 1.3 psi, which is pounds per square inch, which is 1 atmosphere that we're all experiencing. In general terms, it's easier math, I guess, to look at it as 15 pounds per square inch on all of our bodies right now. So if we were to go up to 2 atmospheres, then that gauge, the pressure gauge over there, would go up to 15 psi. It is now just over 1.5 psi, so we're at 1.1 atmospheres, which is kind of close to the pressure in the Dead Sea. So,
okay.
Interesting stuff has been going on in Israel with using the Dead Sea as a pressure basin, even for pulmonology patients. Ran across a couple of papers where pulmonary function tests have been done on former smokers with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease in Tel Aviv, and then the study participants would go to the Dead Sea for 2 weeks, and of course there's various issues and wonderful things in that environment for a health spa, including the salts that are dissolved in the Dead Sea itself. But, and that's called balneotherapy or something like that. But one of the things that in the pressure medicine world is, just even that little bit of change in pressure at the Dead Sea in pulmonary patients has been shown to improve their pulmonary function test after these COPD patients have gone back to Tel Aviv and had their pulmonary function tests looked at for 2 weeks of, little pressure spa Dead Sea therapy. And the other interesting thing that I often like to reflect on in discussing this area of medicine with people is just like Orville Cunningham, who noticed that there was a higher death rate of the Spanish influenza virus back in 1917 in the Rockies and in the mountains. There's a whole lot of people understanding and commonsensical stuff when you start talking about the side effects, so to speak, of low pressure. I mean, the old saw of people with trichine and rheumatoid arthritis, and they could tell when it's going to rain because the barometric pressure is dropping, and that's causing pain in their joints. That's a real phenomenon that has a real basis in science. And there's been some recent studies actually that have shown there's a greater level of suicidality in mountain states in America, even though they're some of them are the happiest people. For instance, in Utah, a state that has a conundrum of both. It's called the Utah paradox, having quite a high suicide rate and yet quite a lot of happy people. And there's neurotransmitter differences that occur in the brain at different pressures. And so that's one explanation of what's going on there. But I think everybody who's ever gone skiing, and especially those of us who are coastal dwellers, and you go up to Aspen, and you start getting headaches from the altitude.
Yeah.
You get high altitude cerebral edema, basically.
Right.
So the set points in your brain are having to do more work with less oxygen at those pressures.
Yeah.
And so there again is another very quick example of pressure in and of itself has an impact on our physiology. Pretty astounding impact actually on our physiology. And again, just the side effects of hypobaria
Right.
is a really interesting flip of the coin on all these people that say, oh, there's nothing to pressure.
Sure.
Really?
There's a lot.
There's a lot to it.
Tell me. So you've got her in. So Row is in a Kevlar chamber.
Yes, this is a semi-mobile Kevlar chamber, 3-man kind of lift. Packs into a suitcase that can then be. This is clinical grade 3 atmosphere peak pressure, and that is in our acute concussion research and work with the IHMF. This was donated by our wonderful patron Gary Theraldson to create a mobile unit for some of our acute concussion research that's going to be getting going here in the fall in North Dakota. And so that will enable me, as part of the team with Daphne Denham in Fargo, to have a little bit of a concussion outreach in Bismarck and Minot and Grand Forks via this chamber being seated into a mobile trailer that I can pull with my F-150. And kind of have well, it would be an ambulance of sorts for the brain.
Yeah.
Right there on wheels. So, and it's very close to my heart because I was scout team quarterback at the University of Chicago my freshman year and working on, I was going to go into physics and had a few concussions, just having a jolly good time playing football with my fraternity brothers. And so I kind of got concussed out of a physics degree at the University of Chicago, but it's probably what was meant to happen. Because now I get to practice medicine with a basis in physics, and it's just incredible.
So she's in your living room in a soft chamber.
Yep. That's where she is.
What's she at now? What are you taking her to?
So we're now at just 3.8 psi. We're just going up real slow. So once we get to 5 psi, we'll be basically at 1.3 atmospheres, which is the soft chamber. That's the soft chamber level. 5 psi, 4.5. And again, just simple sports medicine, really. I mean, if you look at, and I liked, we're eventually going to be on ESPN. That's just the fact.
Right.
Sports medicine and sports media, totally intertwined. We have this national conversation with concussion, and really from a media standpoint, you don't see a lot of drug ads on ESPN.
Right.
Right? What do you see? Nutraceuticals.
Yes.
Electrolytes.
Yeah.
Gatorade. That's where, in a very simple translation of basic understanding of physiology, Row is just right now at about 7 feet of water. How dangerous is 7 feet of water? Woo! Wow, that's real dangerous.
Yeah, so I told somebody this the other day, and you and I were talking about this earlier. That's why you feel so good scuba diving, yeah? Because
Right.
when you're at 90 feet, you have 3 additional atmospheres pushing on your body, and all that air you're breathing from the tank is pushed in deep, deep, deep into the tissues under pressure.
Right, and so what's going on too is there's a very special layer of water which I just want to give a shout out to Jerry Pollack, who grew up in Brooklyn, did his research PhD as a bioengineer, I believe at the University of Pennsylvania, again, where hyperbaric medicine has had a very strong pedigree. And he's now at the University of Washington, and he took it upon himself to start studying water scientifically and from a biophysics standpoint as to how water can do the incredible things which we can't really explain by the 3 phases that we know.
Right.
in traditional science. And he has coined a term and has really proven this out in his lab that, there's actually 4 phases of water. The 4th phase of water is called the exclusion zone of water, and it exists along surfaces and membranes, and it is a special property of water that kind of really creates more of a semi-polymerized state of water. It's also the state of water that in North Dakota, when we're on our ice skates, we're not on solid ice. We're not on a crystalline piece of water.
It's melted.
The pressure, there it is again. Pressure's on, baby. The pressure of that blade on that solid piece of ice melts it into a nanomolecular structure that is semi-polymerized and has 0 friction.
Right.
Okay, so that one basic physical, let's look at North Dakota ice skates. This is the water is the most amazing substance in the universe. I mean, really, when you start looking at it, it's like, how do you have this substance that kind of defies a lot of physics? It's the only substance that I can think of off the top of my head on the periodic table where the solid version is less dense than water at 4 degrees.
Yeah.
Why is it that the fish live through the winter in North Dakota? Because the most dense water is liquid. And the ice sits on top. So look, water is kind of just like oxygen, one of these incredible players in physics and biophysics and biochemistry even. And so what Dr. Pollack has done as an amazing gift to humanity, actually, what he has done with his mind to study water is a gift to all of us. But he has defined that water has this 4th phase, and he also published in the IHMF journal a study of, not even within a biological living tissue, but he just put a layer of water under pressure on a plate, made a tiny little nano, kind of small hyperbaric chamber just for water on a surface.
Yeah.
And then he measured the thickness of this exclusion zone that he's defined as the 4th phase, where it's this semi-polymerized state. And when you pressurize the atmosphere, when you pressurize the molecules in the water, and you're basically packing these little gas buckyballs
Mm-hmm.
into these electron clouds, and they're fitting themselves into, in a very organized lattice, a semi-polymerized zone of water that is, nanometers thick. It can double in thickness. Now, if that's what's going on in our cells, where we have this very special layer of water that basically all of biochemistry needs in our bodies in order to carry out the functions on the membrane of many of these molecules that we have in our bodies, it needs at least some exclusion zone water. Now, if you're putting somebody in a hyperbaric chamber and you're doubling the thickness of that very special layer of water through which all of this biochemical molecular machinery is running faster, you might think it's kind of supercharging some molecular machinery. It might be that gases packed in water layers around cells creates an increased thickness of this interfacial water layer, which then allows more of the kinetics. And if you remember from biochemistry in college, or even in AP classes in high school, there's an activation energy that you need to get over for a lot of these molecular reactions
Right.
to occur. So if you're making the whole system as a weather system, so to speak, more efficient, and packing electrons of gas molecules around and into this interfacial water lattice, and then now you've lowered the activation energy for some very important voltage gradients to keep themselves charged up and built, you can see how it might actually be that water, with the electrochemical and physical lever arm of oxygen and other gases dissolved into interfacial membranes, is basically what is really the neat trick in all of this supercharging of our body's homeostatic systems. And so if we are able to bring back our connectomes organized in a homeostatic and more efficient electrical circuitry through TBI, or if we're getting some of our other homeostatic out of whack systems, like our blood pressure is now, our body has a more efficient self-healing reversal system running through how a lot of this is working on interfacial water and membrane technology of semiconductors that God has given us in our cells. You can see how this is pretty actually simple. It's pretty simple. If you're going to actually take this amazing molecule called water and take its most amazing principle and property, which is the fourth phase, which has only been studied basically in the last 10 years, and start to see the power of how juicing that up with some electron clouds and buckyball molecules called gas, like argon, like helium, like neon. Like there's research that shows even inert gases like argon can stop an acute concussion.
Wow.
In mice.
At
normal pressures.
She's just breathing room air.
She's just breathing room air.
No oxygen in there. So
no. There's oxygen. There's 21% oxygen.
Right, the same oxygen we get.
Yeah.
But you don't need a prescription to do what she's doing.
And 1%, she is breathing 1% argon. And that's a little strange molecule in the periodic table. That's a very special monatomic gas. 18 shell electron cloud, 18 electrons, valence electron system, where when you look at like magnetic levitation trains, you look at repulsion, magnetic and electrical repulsion is a friction-free. Think about this in the terms of our ice hockey skate analogy, where you're using pressure on ice to create a skate that is running on a friction-free surface. Well, the Japanese and Elon Musk, all these people have been for 30 years wanting to build a friction-free train. Put it on repulsive magnets, right? I mean, magnetism is one of the most powerful things in the universe. And you have two repulsing magnetic poles. It allows a friction-free movement of a train. I mean, that's where these gases that are noble gases, when they're repulsing each other in a dissolved polymerized matrix of easy water around these membranes, the free electrons that are floating through this water layer, when there's more repulsion, you're creating a tram track.
Right.
You're creating, by diffusion of gases, a more organized tram track for these electrons to shoot through rather than bouncing around. You pack those electron clouds in tighter. Those electrons that are free and moving across those electron shells are going to move with greater efficiency.
And that's what's happening in there.
Well, God only knows, but that's my theory.
Looks like a human's napping in a tube. So I see a sleeping person in a Kevlar tube.
Yes.
And what are we at here? 4.8 psi. What is she at? About 8 or 9 feet of water, if we were to make that equivalent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's it.
She's in just the mild hyperbaric chamber realm. But let's look at this from the great work of Dom D'Agostino at the University of South Florida, he's a PhD researcher and just focused on hyperbarics. Really the only guy in the country, maybe the only guy in the world that's really tapped into this in the right way in academics. But Dom has defined, just like Jerry Pollack has defined this incredible property of water, Dom is defining this incredible property of pulse press concept of how our bodies, just like exercise, just like rest and stress, and our bodies respond better to variability in stresses and rest states. And so, and similar to, just for those people who are out there, electrical engineers, and like those analogies, you have direct current, which is kind of a steady state. This is a direct current of pressure, basically, on her body. And yet, you could argue, if you could do what Nikola Tesla did with the electrical grid and shuffled electrons back and forth through wires with what we call alternating current, you can see where electrical work gets done all over this globe on an alternating current idea. So we've only scratched the surface in hyperbaric physiology and medicine, but I would argue that if we had, even on top of the direct current pressure, if we had a way of actually jiggling or going back and forth with smaller waves of pressure on top of this big wave of a direct current, you might even see more phenomenal physiological kind of effects, or faster. I don't mean more phenomenal in terms of clinical good that is already phenomenal.
How does it get more phenomenal than bringing people back from the dead and giving them sight again?
Right on, brother.
I don't understand more phenomenal.
It doesn't get any more phenomenal than that. It doesn't at all. But one of my goals with Dr. Harch and the IHMF and all of this incredible team of physicians around the world is, can we find a way to make this faster?
Right.
The phenomenology is beyond compare. But could we get somebody from out of the military environment with a horrible TBI? Could we get that person back, instead of in 40 or 80 hours, could we get them back in 20 hours of hyperbarics? But in the time, research and money metrics, time is money. Research requires money and time, and there's an unfortunate lack of any kind of resource for researching this technology. And you talk about open source computing.
Right. Well, Ted, so this is a 1.3 Kevlar chamber running about what, $80,000?
Well, it goes up to 3.
Okay, yeah, so it's a 3 atmosphere Kevlar chamber, runs about 80 grand.
Right.
Talk to me about the 1.2 atmosphere soft chambers that you can buy.
I mean, put this in a car analogy too, and I could buy a blue Corvette for $80,000.
Right.
They can't do anything that this can.
Wait a minute. You're telling me the blue Corvette can't get my sight back?
No, but it might get you a lot of good looks from certain people at certain.
So there is something to do with looks there.
Yeah, but no, it can't bring your sight back.
Okay.
This little blue Corvette can.
But a 1.2 chamber is what, about $20,000, $25,000?
1.3. There's a giant market basically that has been monetized by Dr. Harch's work and many of the other great physicians who have done all of this incredible research, including Pierre Marois, showing 1.3 atmospheres of room air actually has a significant impact on people. And now there's literally companies out there selling these soft chambers around the globe, you know, making 50 million a year, selling these chambers for between, you know, 20,000 down to 5,000 depending on the size.
Wow.
And you know, what's frustrating about all that is there's not any give back into the community of researchers.
There needs to be, without a doubt.
You know, it's like, hello,
Yeah.
if you're building this giant company selling really cheap chambers in a very difficult regulatory environment, I get it, but at some level you're getting below the regulations. So it's not until we hit 1.4 atmospheres that we are technically in the medical grade pressure zone. And there's a two variable thing here. Oxygen is a regulated medicine,
Right.
in multiple jurisdictions.
Right.
So around the world, you know, although you can go to an oxygen bar in Las Vegas and get 100% oxygen pumped into your nose, you can't, as a non-physician, give anyone oxygen at 100% in Oklahoma.
Right. Right. Well, didn't all of Europe just make that all available as well? So everyone in Europe can use oxygen?
I don't know.
I believe so.
That would be a nice thing.
Well, I know it's probably that way in the UK. I was reading something about that. And
yeah. So you have this patchwork of jurisdictional issues around America and around the world that also complicate a lot of this stuff. But in the end, and this is from Mal Hooper, my friend in Australia, who is chiropractic by training and just an incredible person who has done some of the most avant-garde work in health and wellness with hyperbaric medicine and gotten the crippled to walk by combining hyperbaric medicine with some advanced physiatry equipment that was actually designed in Lincoln, Nebraska at Madonna Rehabilitation Hospital. It's called the Locomat. He's gotten these kids walking again who were not supposed to ever walk because of cerebral palsy.
that's crazy.
And yet the Australian government is breathing down his neck time and time again, trying to basically get him out of being a competitor to establishment medicine. You know, there's a lot of ways to get the hyperbaric physician or practitioner out on a ledge or into a legal quagmire just by the way the rules are set.
Right.
And so here in America, for instance, you know, it's under my licensure as a physician in North Dakota. I can put anybody in this device I want.
With O2.
With O2, without O2. If I want to practice, you know, argonautics,
Sure.
which is using oxygen, nitrogen, and argon in various ratio mixes to affect the human body in ways that I know we can. As an ethical and Hippocratic physician, I can do that under North Dakota law with my license. However, can I get insurance? Am I covered under a malpractice policy to do that? Well, not really.
Right.
So that's where in America you get into this conundrum of, well, I know what's right, and I actually have license by the state to do it.
Sure.
It's not approved to get paid for, so an insurance company isn't going to pay me, and I could still self-bill it, but then if some untoward thing happened to that person just minutes after getting out of that hyperbaric chamber, and maybe they got into a car accident, and some attorney says, well, you know,
Because you had hyperbaric.
because your patient left your facility in a strange state of mind and ran a red light and got into a car accident and now they're dead, the family thinks that you're the proximate cause of their
Sure.
death and you shouldn't have done that. And you're, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
that's what the problem is of working in the most litigious jurisdiction in the world is. You can get sued for anything in
Yeah.
America. And so that is a giant inhibitor of this version of medicine in the right hands.
You want to pull her out of there?
Yeah, I think we should. So,
You coming up, bro?
you ready?
Hold on. I'll fire this thing up and we'll get it.
Oh, it's not real exciting. We're just going back down now.
Well, I'm saying like.
All right, I'm gonna kill this video.
Okay.